to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a true game changer in the world of personal development. We're diving deep into our book explainer of James Clear's absolute masterpiece, Atomic Habits. If you've ever felt totally stuck, like you're just spinning your wheels trying to change your daily routines, well, you're in exactly the right place. We're going to use some incredibly clear visual frameworks to show you how to make your good habits inevitable and your bad habits practically impossible. So let's just dive right in. To really grasp the raw power behind tiny habits, we've got to understand how James Clear even arrived at these ideas in the first place. Picture this. It's the last day of his sophomore year of high school, and James gets hit right in the face with a baseball bat. The damage was horrific. A shattered nose, multiple skull fractures, and his brain tissue started swelling so fast that doctors had to put him into a medically induced coma. In an instant, his lifelong dream of playing professional baseball was just gone. So it really begs the question, how on earth do you rebuild a life from absolute zero? Well, when James finally made it to college, he didn't try to fix his life with some massive, heroic movie montage. Instead, he leaned on incredibly tiny, almost invisible routines. We're talking things like just going to sleep at the same time every single night, making sure his dorm room was perfectly clean. These little atomic-size actions didn't turn him into a superstar overnight, obviously, but they did something way more important. They gave him back a sense of control. They built a foundation of trust in himself. So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover the power of 1%, the valley of disappointment, why identity tops outcomes, the habit loop, the 4 laws of behavior change, and we'll wrap it all up with the 2-minute rule. Okay, section 1, the power of 1%. So society kind of constantly feeds us this idea that massive success requires massive action, right? We put so much pressure on ourselves to make these earth-shattering changes. But what if all you actually need is a tiny 1% improvement each day? Think of this concept like compound interest. At first, the difference between getting 1% better and 1% worse is basically invisible. Like if you study Spanish for an hour tonight, you haven't learned the language. Because the change is so small, it's super easy to brush off. But habits are literally the compound interest of self-improvement. They multiply as you repeat them. Let's look at the staggering math here. If you can manage to get just 1% better every single day for a year, you don't just get a little bit better. You end up almost 38 times better by the end of it. Conversely, if you slack off and get 1% worse daily, you decline almost all the way down to 0. The tiny choices, eating the apple instead of the donut, reading a page instead of scrolling online, they compound into massive differences. It's kind of like an airplane leaving LA for New York. If the nose shifts just 3.5 degrees at takeoff, a shift you wouldn't even feel, you literally end up landing in Washington, D.C. instead. Moving right along to section 2, the valley of disappointment. Look, if you've ever started a new habit and felt like it was totally useless in those first few weeks, I want to validate that right now. It's not a flaw in your willpower, it is literally a feature of how progress works. We all expect progress to be this nice, neat, straight line going up. But reality is that curved line dipping underneath. That frustrating gap between what we expect and what's actually happening is what Clear calls the valley of disappointment. This is exactly where people give up. They run for a month, the scale doesn't move, they quit. But your effort wasn't wasted. It was just being stored. It's like a bamboo tree. For 5 whole years, you see absolutely nothing above ground while it builds a massive root system. And then, boom, in 6 weeks, it shoots 90 feet into the air. Your daily habits are building that root system. Section 3, identity over outcomes. If you really want to survive that valley of disappointment, you have to fundamentally shift your focus. True lasting change isn't about what you want to achieve, it's about who you are. Most people tackle change from the outside in. They start with the outcome, I want to lose weight, which leads to the process, I'll go on a diet. But they completely ignore the inner core, identity. Authentic change has to start at that core identity level and ripple outwards. You shouldn't aim to just read a book. Your goal should be to become a reader. Don't just aim to run a marathon, aim to become a runner. This specific comparison hits the nail right on the head. Imagine 2 people being offered a cigarette. The first one says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." Sounds reasonable, right? But they still fundamentally view themselves as a smoker who is trying to act differently. Now the second person says, "No thanks, I am not a smoker." Wow, that is a massive shift. They no longer identify with that old habit. Behavior that doesn't match your underlying identity simply won't last. Every single time you do a habit, you're casting a vote for the type of person you want to become. All right, section 4, the habit loop. Let's actually peek under the hood at your brain's neurological machinery to see how these routines form. Your brain is constantly scanning your environment in this infinite, rapid-fire cycle. It moves instantly from noticing a problem to executing a solution. And the crazy part? This is happening thousands of times a day, completely in the background, without you even noticing. We can slice this infinite loop into 4 distinct steps. First up is the cue. This triggers your brain to start a behavior, like your phone buzzes. Second is the craving, which is the underlying motivation. You really want to know who just texted you. Third is the response, the actual action. You grab the phone. And finally, the reward. You read the text, satisfying that initial craving. It's simple. Without the first 3 steps, a behavior won't even happen. But without all 4, it'll never be repeated. Which naturally leads us to section 5, the 4 laws of behavior change. So how do we actually hack this loop to our advantage? We take those brain mechanics and turn them into 4 incredibly practical levers. Number 1, make it obvious. Redesign your environment so the cues for your good habits are literally staring you in the face. Number 2, make it attractive. Try pairing an action you want to do with an action you need to do. Number 3, make it easy. Look, human beings are wired for the path of least resistance, so remove the friction. And number 4, make it satisfying. Give yourself an immediate, small reward to close out that habit loop. If you lock in these 4 levers, your good habits become practically inevitable. But what about those pesky bad habits? Easy. You just invert the laws. To kill a bad habit, first, make it invisible. If you're wasting time on video games, literally unplug the console and hide it in a closet after you play. Second, make it unattractive. Third, make it difficult. Add a ton of friction between you and that bad behavior. And fourth, make it unsatisfying. By systematically flipping these levers in the opposite direction, you're designing an environment where messing up and doing the bad habit is actually harder than doing the right thing. And finally, section 6, the 2-minute rule. We are wrapping up the tactical side of this book explainer with what is maybe my favorite strategy for completely obliterating procrastination. It's the 2-minute rule. The rule states that any new habit should take no more than 2 minutes to do. Why? Because when we get inspired to change, we go way too hard, way too fast. We decide we're going to run 3 miles on day 1, burn out, and quit by day 3. You have to scale it down. You absolutely must master the art of just showing up before you worry about optimizing the routine. Let's rapid fire some real-world examples. Read before bed each night shrinks down to read 1 page. Do 30 minutes of yoga becomes simply roll out my yoga mat. Study for class becomes open my notes. You are magically shrinking these huge, intimidating goals into tiny 2-minute starter atoms. I know, it sounds almost ridiculous at first, but a habit has to be established before it can be improved. You literally cannot optimize a habit that doesn't exist yet. And this really brings our whole journey full circle. When you just tie your running shoes or you read just 1 single page, you might not be running a marathon or finishing a novel that exact minute. But you're doing something way deeper. You're actively building your new identity. You are casting a vote that says, hey, I am the kind of person who doesn't miss workouts, or I am someone who reads. Ultimately, your habits are the channel through which you develop your deepest beliefs about yourself. You literally become your habits. So I want to leave you with this provocative question to chew on as we finish up this explainer. Take a hard look at the tiny 1% decisions you've made so far today. Who are you choosing to become today? Thank you so much for joining me, and go start